Let's talk about Final Fantasy. The once proud role-playing series has definitely fallen on some hard times in the modern era of gaming. I guess it all really started to go downhill when Final Fantasy XIII came along. Sure, before that, game fans had their issues with other installments like Final Fantasy VIII, its junction system, Final Fantasy X and its brain-dead protagonist, Final Fantasy XII and its androgynous protagonist, who totally shouldn't have been the protagonist, but 13 is when the crap factor went into overload and not many fans were standing by that mess of a game. Even before the game reached the shores of America, pictures of the Japanese strategy guide sealed its fate. I remember people over the internet gaming forums bugging out over those pictures, which showed each dungeon as a linear hallway. To quell the notion that the game would suck, everyone and their mother kept saying that, oh, at the end of the game things really open up and you're free to explore. Yet, this statement failed to address the preceding 15 hours of linear gameplay with a story that makes no freaking sense and a battle system that plays on autopilot as it locks you out of key character development features that have been standard for the series for almost, 25 years? But before the fans could really comprehend the unholy nightmare of 13 as it descended like a piece of chocobo stool onto the gaming masses, Square launched Final Fantasy XIV Online, which was completely unfinished and was so terribly received post-launch that Square had to issue several apologies to the online community. Hey, Square, where's the apology for 13, huh? After that, you'd think Square would want to try releasing something different to try and fix their fading reputation, but instead they chose to make a sequel to 13 because apparently they had a ton of assets left over and they didn't fit into 13 and they didn't seem to know what to do with them. Now at first you might think that this was somewhat a decent idea since it's the chance for Square to fix all of the mistakes that the first game made, only to find that Square somehow managed to make it even worse. Hell, they even included time travel in this one, since the original game made so much sense with all of its made up terminology, why not include one of the hardest elements of fiction in your narrative on top of that? After that, you think that Square would want to get the hell away from anything remotely associated with the 13 brand, but nope, they made lightning returns. Why? I don't know. I mean, there could not have been a fan outcry for this. Sure, 13 must have sold well on its name alone, but 13-2 must have struggled in sales, making me wonder what the hell the point of a third installment possibly could be. Seriously, the Final Fantasy fanbase has been crying out for a remake of Final Fantasy VII for the better part of a decade, and yet Square thought that the 13 trilogy of trash was a priority. Now, I never bought Lightning Returns, even at its bargain bin price that you can find nowadays, though I did play the demo for about an hour or two, and I couldn't comprehend any of it from a plot perspective. The gameplay was kinda decent, invoking a style of real-time combat, but I mean, what's the point of having somewhat decent gameplay if every time I have to watch a cutscene I feel like I'm about to have a brain aneurysm? Regardless, Square is trying to bounce back in more recent years and to different degrees of success. Final Fantasy XIV was relaunched as A Realm Reborn as Square destroyed the online community it created with the first version, and I'm dead serious about that since the opening of A Realm Reborn has Bahamut basically nuking the planet causing the apocalypse to wipe the slate clean. 13 trilogy, god I still can't believe I have to say that, finished, and Square was able to move past it with the release of Final Fantasy Type 0 and Final Fantasy 15. Though both of those games continue to highlight the defining fault that I seem to have with the more recent outings in the Final Fantasy series, which is that plot explanation and structure seem to almost be non-existent. Square loves creating these very expansive and lore-filled worlds, but fails to explain any of it in a comprehensible manner. For instance, I'm still not really sure what the hell was going on in Final Fantasy 15 around the halfway point. Sure, things were happening, but I felt clueless and unsure about how it was unfolding or even why. The characters throw around all this terminology, but they never really explain it in detail. It's like you have to read a book and study it before playing the game. Hell, if you didn't watch that Final Fantasy 15 Kingsglaive movie, I don't really know how you're supposed to understand the opening of Final Fantasy 15 in a very clear way. Trust me, you guys want to have a fun Saturday night? Play through the opening of Final Fantasy 13, and each time the game throws a word around with no explanation, take a shot. But you better have one friend on standby by their phone so that they can call the ambulance when half of your other friends are dying from alcohol poisoning. The most recent fun I've had with the series would have to be the remaster of Final Fantasy XII that came out last summer. I was never really a big fan of 12 back in the day since I felt that license board and the shops kind of ruined the progression of how I wanted my characters to develop. Sure, the license board is expansive and you're never locked out from going in any one direction, but when the shops are selling me a sword that's going to raise my attack by 35, it kind of makes me not want to have my character specialize in guns that are only going to end up raising attack by 5 points. However, Final Fantasy XII The Zodiac Age really surprised me and I really enjoyed my time with it, especially the new Zodiac job system, which made me feel like the characters were truly unique from one another. And the story actually made sense. Well, a hell of a lot more sense than, say, 13 or 15 story did to me anyway. Now, I would love to do a whole video on Final Fantasy XIII, and I almost made one a few years ago. However, playing through 13 and its sequels is the equivalent of getting a prostate exam from Wolverine. Also, the video is just going to be one long-ass rant telling you the things you probably are well aware of at this point, so instead I thought I'd take a look at one of the Final Fantasy games that has more of a mixed reception and one that I personally tend to have a love-hate relationship with. And that brings us here to Final Fantasy X. Now, Final Fantasy X was the fourth Final Fantasy game that I ever played after experiencing the 3 PlayStation Final Fantasies. 10 was obviously quite a big improvement. As a kid, I flat out loved the game, but over the years I've taken some issues with it, particularly with the design and the story. Now, the story's not half the train wreck that 13 is, but there are some examples of lazy writing here, and we'll all get there in good time, but we have to unfortunately start this story way back at the beginning. So our story begins in the futuristic city of Zanarkand, where we meet our main protagonist, Titus. Or Titus. Or whiny blonde with one pant leg that's longer than the other. Look, I don't know how you're supposed to really say his name. I've always called him Titus, so that's what I'm sticking with. I know technically it's probably supposed to be Titus. Hell, I think even James Arnold Taylor, the guy that voices him, has stated in interviews that it's Titus, and I think in Kingdom Hearts they clearly said it was Titus, but look, I spent years calling him Titus, so I'm again sticking with that. Over the years, I've come to the realization that everyone pretty much hates Titus for many different reasons. Some think he looks retarded, others think he's too stupid, and the list goes on. I've always felt that the writers make Titus too stupid for his own good, and that broke any connection between him and the player. I get that Titus is in a new world and he doesn't understand the world around him anymore, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to have the IQ of a piece of driftwood, now does it? Titus, it turns out, is on his way to the big Blitzball game. What's Blitzball, I hear a few of you saying? Well, imagine if you were trying to play soccer underwater inside a giant fishbowl, all while holding your breath for the whole game. Seriously, we're not even a good 10 minutes into this, and there's already something that we have to pause and take an issue with. Okay, how are Titus and the other players breathing for so long? I mean, even as a kid, I couldn't wrap my head around this one. I came up with this theory that maybe Blitzball players have, like, gills. I know that sounds batshit crazy, but at least it's more of an explanation than the game gives you. The game never explains this, not even in some text document that you can read later on, not from like some dialogue that a character just throws away in passing, nothing. Hell, there's not even a definite answer online, which is really strange since the Final Fantasy official wiki has an answer for practically everything you don't want to know the answer to. And this breathing issue is really just the tip of the issues I got with Blitzball, but we'll talk more about that a little later. So the main bad guy Sin shows up and starts destroying the city. Sin is a giant whale monster that could be seen as the long-lost cousin of Godzilla. Granted, we don't really see him right now, he kinda just looks like he's chilling in a water bubble. Titus escapes and runs into Auron, who frankly is the best character in the game. He's a man so badass that he chugs alcohol right before a fight, and he doesn't believe in left sleeves apparently. The two try to get away from Sin, but that doesn't go as planned, and before you know it, Titus and Auron get sucked up into Sin's blowhole. At least that's what I think they're getting sucked up into. I mean, what else could that be? Titus wakes up in some creepy ruins and almost gets eaten by two different monsters before he gets saved by some unexpected guest. No, back it up, stop, nope, stop the game. What the hell is this? What the hell is this? Okay, skipping ahead a bit, we later find out that this, whatever this is just a bodysuit of some kind. But for now, can I just say why? Like, who thinks to themselves, I'm going deep sea diving and I think I'll wear a flesh-colored bodysuit that pretends to show off my breast and my ass cheeks? Though this outfit is tame compared to the bizarre creations we're going to see later, just trust me on that. So, questionable wardrobe aside, this is Riku. No, not that Riku, this Riku. Riku's group takes Titus back to their ship, and they have him go deep-sea diving to help them find an airship that you're not going to be able to use until the end of the game. Also, they don't speak English, so the game's using subtitles to depict their fictional language. However, if you play the game once and you find all the dictionaries decoding the language, you can play the game over again and see what they're saying. Though, trust me, you can often just guess once enough of the letters fill in as the game goes on. Before Titus can help out, Riku gets to explain the game's character development system called the Sphere Grid. At first it seems interesting, I mean, look at the size of this damn thing, it's huge. However, eventually, and by eventually I mean in around 5 minutes, you're going to come to realize that the Sphere Grid is just busy work. Simply put, you move around the grid node by node, and on each node is an upgrade of sorts like more health, defense, speed, a new ability, something like that. Occasionally, and I use that word loosely here, the path splits and there's usually one or two nodes off to the side. But before you know it, you'll hit those and then go back on the main path, moving from node to node. And the biggest fault to the Sphere Grid is that it breaks the flow of the game. You fight battle after battle, but you're not going to notice any different in combat until you pause the game, go into the menu, move your character around a bit, and then get all the upgrades. And it's such busy work. It would have been cooler if you could have picked your own paths, like take abilities from all the different Final Fantasy classes, which I'm guessing is what this is supposed to be emulating to some degree, only instead of you choosing, they've laid it out for you. Like, what about having Titus be a mix of the warrior class and a black mage? So by the end of the game, you get some spheres that allow you to jump to other characters' paths and you can steal their abilities. But that seems like a bit of an overthought at that point. I mean, your character's already way overleveled and they have their own abilities, and there's really not much to do in the post-game content other than just grind battles, so I don't really see what the purpose is at that point. I should mention that the HD International version does contain a different version of this grid called the Expert Grid, and this basically has all the characters start up at the same point, and you can choose which path they go on. But you still gotta pause and do all the manual moving around things, so while the end result might be a little bit better in that you'll have characters that are slightly more diverse this time, the execution still kinda sucks. Also, that trophy for completing the sphere grid for all the characters can go impale itself on a longsword. Trying to obtain that trophy in a normal sense is going to drive you up a wall. You seriously need a guide, and even then it's like a 12-step process just to make it a little bit simpler, so you know what? Screw you, 100% platinum. After this tutorial, Titus and Riku find the airship and start having a conversation in which Titus seems to be wetting himself over the fact that Riku can speak English.
You really do understand! Woo-hoo-hoo!
When Titus drops the fact that he came from Xanarkand, she tells him this.
Yeah, there is no Xanarkand anymore. Sin destroyed it 1,000 years ago.
What do you mean, 1,000 years ago? But I saw Sin attack Xanarkand. You're saying that happened 1,000 years ago? No way!
Unfortunately, before any more of the plot can be revealed, Sin arrives and takes Titus away. Again. Seriously? Sin just sucked Titus up into his blowhole like, what, 10 minutes ago? And it's like he knew Titus was in the wrong area of the game and he had to fix that, so he might as well have just swam up to him and said, "Sorry bro, I totally overshot the landing the first time, I'll get you in the right zone this time." Now Titus wakes up near Besaid Island where he meets the Besaid Aurochs and their captain Waka, and then he gets to show off his blitz moves that clearly defy the laws of physics. Also, on a side note here, can I mention that I don't really understand how the blitz ball works? Like, there's parts now and later in the game where we'll see like it stops in the air and it's able to just hover for a bit and like just stay frozen, which clearly doesn't follow the laws of physics. Is it like possessed? Is it magic? Is it a bounce sort of thing? Is it not filled up with like air like normal balls in the real world? I'm just very confused. Titus, like an idiot, name drops Xanarkand again to Waka, even though Riku just told him not to, and so Waka gives him that same speech as before. However, Waka is far more interested in the fact that Titus is a blitzball player, since it turns out that the Besaid Aurochs are a lot like the Cleveland Browns in that they suck. Maybe if Waka spent more time training than gelling up that hair of his, they might stand a chance. Anyway, Waka wants Titus on the team, so he ropes him into going to a blitzball tournament held in Lucca to find somebody he knows, or rather he just wants him so he can help the team win the tournament. Titus goes to the local temple back at the village where he continues to make an ass of himself by acting confused at every word he doesn't know.
10 years have passed since Lord Braska became High Summoner. And finally, we receive a statue for our temple.
Well, what's a High Summoner?
Seriously, the guy could try a little bit harder to blend in. Though at times I feel like Titus should have some understanding of certain terms like, for instance, Crusader.
Who are they?
Luzu and Gata, Crusaders.
Huh? Crews of what?
What, you forgot that too?
Speaking of Crusaders, I love this scene at the Crusader Lodge.
I'm sorry, I really don't know anything. To tell the truth, I don't even know what the Crusaders are. You're kidding, right?
Sin, the toxin. Gotta tell him who we are.
Yes, sir! The Crusaders are sworn to battle Sin. We have chapters throughout Spira, accepting all who wish to join our struggle. The hero Mihen formed the Crusaders 800 years ago as the Crimson Blades. Later, our ranks grew and we called ourselves the Crusaders. We've been fighting Sin ever since.
What? You've been fighting 800 years and you still haven't beat it?
Well, we've steered Sin away from towns many times. And that's all we can do. Nobody's ever been able to defeat it.
Really? I wonder how a bunch of random soldiers with swords have managed to lure the Cloverfield monster away from villages. Is that why some Crusaders don't make it back because they're used as live bait? What's the matter, Titus? You didn't want to ask that particular question? Anyway, back to the temple. Titus learns that there's a summoner inside the Cloister of Trials and that they've been in there a while. So Titus naturally decides to dash inside, which he's not supposed to do, and try to help out.
The precepts must be obeyed!
Like I care!
And it's here where the game introduces the next big time waster, the Cloister of Trials. More like the Cloister of Balls. Seriously, all you do is move balls into slots to pick up more balls, to put in more slots, touch a few little weird glyph symbols on the wall to get even more balls, and in about 10 minutes it's over. The biggest offense to this holding is that you can only hold one ball at a time. Are you freaking serious? What the hell is wrong with Titus's left hand? Oh, the dude can hold his breath underwater for an undisclosed amount of time, but God forbid he try to hold two things at once. At this rate, he'd probably be unable to tap his head and rub his stomach at the same damn time. And you have to do this at each temple, and it just gets more time consuming as you go. This one takes about 4 to 5 minutes, but there's one near the end that's going to make you want to drown kittens. Note, the Chris Bond Review Show does not endorse the drowning of kittens. Also, side note here, if Titus wasn't supposed to go in here, what's really stopping the priest from following me? Hell, he could probably stop for a drink and some smokes on the way, because by the time he reaches me, I'll probably still be swapping balls, and he could easily just drag my ass out of there. So anyway, after dealing with balls for 5 minutes, Waka decides to take Titus further because, well, I guess he figures I deserve it after dealing with all the balls. So we meet the other guardians inside the cloister, the Wookiee Kimari, the Black Mage Lulu, who could probably use a few of those belts to hold her chocobos inside that dress of hers, and finally the summoner Yuna. Also, nobody seems to give two craps that Titus just broke an ancient religious rule, since all the villagers are shitting themselves over what summon spell Yuna got inside the temple. So yeah, so much for breaking the rules and the consequences. I think now is a good time to talk about the combat system, which is flat out awesome. Each character is skilled to defeat a certain type of enemy. Titus can slash your standard enemies, Waka can take out aerial foes, Lulu can mostly handle magical enemies, so on and so forth. Also, you can switch party members at will, though once your 3 main guys drop, you better not expect your reserve team to come running out and avenge you. It's game over, which kinda doesn't make sense, but I guess it'd be too easy the other way. The great thing about the system is that every character gets to be used, so no one really should be neglected at any point. Also, there's a turn-based list on the side of the screen telling you the order of both you and the enemies, which really helps out. Some of the earlier Final Fantasy games really pissed me off because they're based on some sort of like a quick draw sort of a thing where you have to press the button fast enough and beat the other enemy from moving first, which I just felt was really cheap and could lead to a lot of unfair deaths. So I really do love this system. The summoning system is also brand new, as now you get to control your summons and tell them what to do directly. Now when I first saw this, I thought it was the coolest thing ever, since again, I was used to Final Fantasy games where you go to summon a monster and then you leave to go take a pee break because by the time you're done with that, the animation's about half over. Also, I guess I should also bring up Waka's weapon of choice here, as I'm sure some of you are wondering if I'm going to. Yes, Waka uses a Blitzball, and it looks as stupid as it sounds, really. Though, personally, I'll take the Blitzball over Renoa's wrist boomerang thing that can launch a dog, or Vanille's fishing pole that she randomly found and somehow knows how to use after 5 minutes, which I find are way stupider in comparison. Yeah, the Blitzball is a pretty dumb choice for weapons, so the best thing to do is not think about it and just move on. Well, after that series of battles, we finally reached the boat off Besaid and on to the next island. Our adventure in Final Fantasy X has just begun, so come back next time as the journey continues as we reach the shores of Kilika Village and start the epic Blitzball tournament, which will most likely drive me nuts for the upteenth time that I've played this game. Thanks for watching.